Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me voice actor Brian Mathis, who is the voice of Elias Ainsworth from The Ancient Magnus Bride, Vodex from Reride D. Daria, who leapt through time. Hopefully, I got that name right.
Close enough, man.
Close enough, right? Close enough. Macro from Fairy Tale, Mansum from Toriko, and Garp from One Piece, to name a few. So thank you for being on.
Hey, I am so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, I am very excited because I know a lot of your roles. I've watched a bunch of anime, and I know your voice sporadically throughout everything that I just mentioned. And we're going to get into some of those roles and really dive into it. But I am curious before we get into it how you got into voice acting and acting as a whole, because you've been involved in the industry for a while now.
Yeah, I, I don't, I got into voiceover as far as anime. I got into voiceover like late in life. I was well into my 40s when I started that. I had done a few voiceovers here and there, and I had been doing, a ton of theater and musicals and all that kind of thing, and a little bit of TV here and there. And uh, since I'm in the North Texas area, which is where a lot of these anime companies are, Funimation and uh, several others. Um, it I just had a lot of actors that said you need to be doing voices for them and that sort of thing. And gosh, I guess that was 2007. I think was the first year I did. I think the first show I ever did for Funimation was Hell Girl. I think that's right. Hell Girl? It was something having to do with hell. I don't know. But
Well, in your defense, the early 2000s and even going into 2007, a bunch of anime sort of broke down the gate. I think it is a fair assumption where legitimately every anime was being licensed and brought over, and things were being brought over more in chunks at that point.
mm,
Because prior to like 2000, it was the Wild West. When
yeah,
Funimation first started, it was legitimately the Wild West in anime.
that's I have heard the same story. Yeah, that it was untamed.
So in your defense, if you don't remember every single role, it's clear that the Wild West needed to sort of die a little bit, to put it nice and politely. And
Yeah,
and now we have a much cleaner process, clearly.
yeah. Because I can't even name off the roles that I've done. So that you'd have to go to the behind the voice actor page or Anime News Network or something like that, and you can get a full list there. So um,
And speaking about that, because we're going to dive into a bunch of those roles, but one of the things that I think you're known for that doesn't get credit is that you do a lot of additional voice work on a lot of these shows.
mhm.
And you don't have, in particular, a character name. It might be two characters mumbling, but you've been involved in almost every single major show in the last, I think, 6 years. And I'm just going to drop names here: My Hero Academia, obviously 91 Days, the time I got reincarnated as a slime, Dr. Stone, and legitimately there's like 100 more. And so this is something that I think people don't fully understand and recognize with voice acting, is that voice acting isn't just being a character or having a support character or being in one episode. There is background voice acting. There is mumbling, much like on a TV show. When you see a scene in a coffee shop, you know, there's real dialogue being exchanged between those two people who are on a background, but
Right.
it's not being necessarily recorded, or it might even be recorded and then sort of really, really lowered down where it's not detectable, but it's still sort of in there. So I'm not exactly sure if I completely described the additional voice stuff perfectly or gave the right analogy, but what is that like? Because clearly you've been in so many roles and so many
Well,
shows at this point.
yeah. Well, no, you're absolutely right, and I think you are the first person to actually acknowledge the fact that not only is the story going on that is in the forefront, that's what's happening, there's always a little one-liner that moves the story along, or there's something going on in the background. But they got to have voices for all of that stuff. And so I've been fortunate enough to to do a lot of really cool, awesome roles. I mean, Elias Ainsworth, what he's probably my favorite. Uh, where I got to really sink into some acting stuff and do some fun stuff with my voice. But I've done things uh, that are they're not just filler. They are part of what somebody actually wrote in a story, just like whenever you watch a TV show or a film or a play or whatever. It's like that old adage is small there's no small parts, you know. There's only small actors. Uh, uh, so a lot of times, I mean, how many films or TV shows or even animes have you watched where you remembered a character that had either one or two lines, and you were always remembering that something about that made an impression on you? Well, that writer thought it was important enough to put it there. And there's been shows that I've even done, major roles on, that they had me do uh, other parts on that were tiny, just because they needed some other kind of texture in there. And so that happens. So a lot of times, a lot of the anime fans might have heard of the term walla, um, and that is kind of an armchair word of background noise and background talking. And I've been in sessions where you'll have two or three guys, or a guy and two girls, or whatever, just to give some texture in the sounds, and different age groups too, um, to do crowd noise. And we will say random improvised words sometimes. Sometimes they're actually put on the script, but we will loop that two or three times, two or three different ways, so that it gets stacked and it all sounds like a big crowd scene. And that's, so that happens. Um, and then,
And it
like
is
I said,
important.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
very important because it actually brings the show and makes it real and makes it less stiff and makes it more flexible. And I think
yeah,
that it's something that is often passed over in voice acting, and us as fans with voice actors. I think people don't fully understand and don't appreciate it because it makes the show, as I stated, less stiff and real in many ways. And it's super important. And even though the big roles and character roles are important, without the walla and the background noise, it's not, doesn't bring it out to the big stage, and it also doesn't highlight those single characters outward.
right, yeah. Well, and I think if you watched a show and those things were omitted, you would immediately miss them, right? But because they're in there and they add texture and they add layers to a very big lasagna, you know, um, it's important to the overall flavor of the thing. So I promise you, if those sounds got pulled, you would go, "Oh, wait, we're in a stadium and there's people and there's no sound? Why didn't they do that?" Well, they didn't want to use any actors to do that because they didn't think it was important. Well, the audience is going, "Well, that's stupid because there's supposed to be 10,000 people out here," right? So it's one of those things that you don't think about it until it's gone or it's missing, right? So
I'll
all
give an
all of it's
analogy that's
yeah,
relevant. So right now, WWE and its WrestleMania is this weekend. So for the first time in over a year, they're going to have fans in the stadium that the WrestleMania is going to be at. So for the
yeah,
last year and a half or so, or maybe the last year and a month, I should say. Okay, I'm getting 5 months ahead of myself. Clearly, where I'm thinking. I'm clearly in July here, everybody. But one of the things is that it's a very different wrestling environment when there's no fans and you're watching this epic match and then there's no fans. So that's kind of, I think, an analogy that anybody who's seen WrestleMania last year is like, wait a second, like there's something missing here.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the perfect analogy. And I know it's not exactly Walla because fans are a little bit different. And this is, if I'm assuming for the most part, fans in wrestling are real versus being an anime. But I think the concept is the same. Now, having said all that, I do want to start getting into some of your big roles. And the first one I want to talk about, and we're going to go old school, is Kuro from Hero's Tailor.
Wow.
We're going old school. We're going deep. And he's a little bit crazy. And this is, I believe, how he looks.
Yeah, that's Kuro. That's him.
And so this is kind of your first big role. In many ways, one of your first big character roles. So how did that all come about? And what was that process like, getting into that role and finding it? And was it granted to you or given to you, or was there auditioning? Because it is complicated how roles, sometimes directors have a person in mind immediately for a role. And sometimes people audition like, man, that was a really good audition, and this person is perfect for it. So it's tricky.
You are so right, Andrew. That was so long ago. I don't remember how it actually came about. It was Tyler Walker that was the director on that. And I don't know if I auditioned for it. I just know that up to that point, I had done a lot of smaller roles for him, several smaller roles for him. And I think it was one of those things of, they contacted me and, Tyler wants you to do this role. And I wasn't thinking about anything about it. And we got in the studio and he goes, so this is a new show and you're going to do this role. And this is a lot bigger role. And this is the Lord Kuro. And he was giving me the whole backstory. And I was enamored with the story because it's, it was such a cool fantasy and all this kind of thing. But yeah, and to this day, I still love that show because it was so interesting, and I loved playing him, and the way I pitched my voice for him, and and I don't have a lot of fans or people that mention Hero Tales very much, unless they're like really old school anime fans. But hopefully, maybe after this, they'll go, oh, yeah, I looked it up on either Funimation or wherever they saw their streaming service, or maybe they bought the DVDs or something and watched it. But yeah, I loved doing that show.
And I like Hiro because he is a deranged individual. He's a little psychotic. He might be a demon for all we know, or he has demon attributes, and basically he wants to be emperor of, I believe, what is sort of Japan, but it's more of like a fantasy type Japan.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get, I guess, this sword that's going to grant it to him, and obviously he's willing to do whatever it takes, and, well, he's not a very nice human being, to put it politely.
Right.
To put it very, very politely. So what was that like, getting to really play this type of character that is a villain and that is willing to stop at nothing and is willing to cross lines? Because it must be fun to some degree that you get to say certain lines that you can't say with other characters that you've done.
Right. Well, and first of all, he's got a great scar on his face. I mean, who doesn't like to have a good scar on your face? I mean, there you go. I mean, and then look, and it's from the top of his head through the eye and everything across the mouth. It's great. And he's got that epic mustache, which what's the
It's
character?
also my feet.
Yes, there's another great picture of him. There's at one point that he gets referred to very derogatorily as mustache a few times. Um, so that I thought that was fun. Um, he the other thing about Kuro is he got to use the they wrote a lot of I felt like they gave him a lot of beautiful language, to say he I don't know, it was just he was a little more eloquent in his words than some of the other characters that I've voiced before. So it was fun to say the things that were on the page, you know. Um, but like you said, he's just, he's a badass. So, um, and anytime you're playing a character that's wielding swords and that sort of thing is always a good thing. And anytime you see, like, okay, well, this is a fight coming up and this is where he's going to slash through the body with the sword and that sort of thing, and how long am I going to have to scream on this one passage to get through to the next shot? Oh, I've got to scream for 7 full seconds. Okay, all right, so big breath, here we go. So
And also, this, in many ways, in this entire show, is more mature than some
yeah.
other roles that you've been involved in. And obviously, we're going to talk about Fairy Tale and
Hmm.
obviously Macau. And
Hmm.
I think I said it right. I
Yeah,
probably didn't
Macau.
say it right.
Yeah,
So
there
this
he
is
is.
what he looks like, and obviously he's a bit more of a fun character. He obviously Fairy Tale as an entire show is a fun show,
Hmm.
and obviously he's sort of significant in many ways because I feel like Madhouse sets the entire tone of Fairy Tale because of the first episode. He
Yeah,
sort of gets, from what I remember, I should say, it's been a while since I've seen all of Fairy Tale, but he sort of gets trapped on a mission and Natsu kind of saves his ass, and it
yeah,
kind of sets the tone a little bit of what Fairy Tale is about, and obviously the relationship between you and Natsu and the entire like group in Fairy Tale and everything in that entire storyline. So, what was that like in getting into that role?
you
Because
know,
it's a different role
it,
than
he, yeah, he is, because it was hard. It was hard for me at first because he's he he's a little more grounded than everybody else. He's like almost the most real guy in our 21st century world. He's more of the most real guy, and everybody else is kind of a character, even though in Fairy Tale everyone is in their reality. Okay, that is their world. But as far as 21st century world where we are, he seemed to be the only guy that was like normal. Because I remember, because Tyler Walker directed that as well, and I remember having a conversation with him of, wow, some of these characters look, they're really crazy, and some of the voices I had heard were, out there, and I mean, he had so many great voice talents in this
it's an
in
ensemble
this show.
cast.
Yeah,
Put it
it really
politely.
is. But I remember asking Tyler, I said, "So, what do you hear Macau sounding like?" And he goes, "Um, I think he sounds like you." And I was like, "What does that mean?" He was like, "Well, he just kind of sounds like you. He's a dad. He's a nice guy. He's just kind of there, and he's kind of talking, how you are in everyday life." And I'm like, okay, so you don't want any kind of any kind of affectation to any kind of sound. He goes, no, I just think you need to sound like you. And I was like, okay, so that's why I think he just sounds like he's one of the most grounded people in that world. In that world. So yeah.
And what's fun about Macau is that obviously they all go to another world, and I'm probably gonna get this name wrong, possibly Daedalus. And I close enough. Everybody knows what I'm talking about when they pretty much all go, and you got to voice, I guess, his counterpart in that other world as well, and that was slightly different. And so
Hmm.
you got to also do a different take on him and this character because that entire world was sort of like a reverse flip of a bunch of characters and didn't have
Right.
magic in it. And it was kind of crazy because we get this cool moment where you get to sort of play a different version, but certain traits are still there.
Right. Right. And it's been so long since I have watched any fairy tale, and I had forgotten about that alternate universe where he looked a little different and his attitude was a little bit different, and his he even had he had a different name, and even though he was Macau, or you know, um, yeah, it was. I don't know. It now that I'm thinking about it, it just I kind of had to forget about who Macau was, and I think now that I'm thinking about it, I think Tyler and I kind of talked about what would be not the antithesis of Macau, but what would be almost almost his antithesis, to make him, different, um, and to stand apart from who Macau was. So that's where we are.
And then obviously Fairy Tale evolves and Macau becomes older, and obviously Fairy Tale lasted 9 seasons. And we're going
Mhm.
to talk about One Piece in a second, or maybe in like 20 minutes from now, to be more precise. But one of the things about Fairy Tale is that Fairy Tale was almost the gift that keeps on giving, where there's a lot of roles and a lot of opportunity, a lot of episodes. I mean, we're talking 300 episodes plus in Fairy Tale, and Macau appears in a bunch of them. And
Yeah,
so Macau's not in every single episode, but Macau has certain episodes that are more centric to him. And there's two or three with his like group that he's a part of, and then he just makes like a line or two, and it's a big ensemble cast. But what is that like to be part of a show that lasted so long in some capacity? Because it is kind of a cool thing, and it stayed culturally relevant for 9 plus years, and it was airing for 9 plus years, and it's still being spoken about and people are still watching it, people still remember it. And so what is that like for you? Because sometimes shows only last 12 episodes.
yeah. Well, I, I, I think it's like any kind of show, whether it's an anime or an old television show. There's something that people identify with, or there's something that they find continuously entertaining about it, or they find that there's something about it that it's so well crafted that every time they watch it, they find something different in it, or it sparks something else in them. So, um, and also with anime, some of these shows are so beautifully drawn. The backgrounds are robust, or the characters are very interesting looking, and that sort of thing. So and also with fairy tale, we talked about how some of the characters they're so out there, and the voices are unusual, and there's a lot of different textural sounds in the voice and things like that. um, I think that makes it interesting too. So when you have thousands and thousands of people, if not millions of people, that are watching fairy tale over and over again, and they're interested in it, and they're telling their anime friends who have just become anime fans. They go, "Oh, if you're going to check out anime, you got to check out fairy tale." So that's then it comes back up again. So and because there were so many different changes in storyline and things like that, and new characters, and you know it just I think that helps that enduring quality about it.
And also, it's just the fact that it was new episodes for 9+ seasons and the movies and all that stuff. And that, a lot of people, including myself, like long stories where
Yeah,
when I invest, I want to know everything about these characters. And after 50 episodes, if I just spent a year with these characters and got invested and it's over, as a fan of this stuff, I'm like, great, that was a great story. But when I have 9 seasons and 300 episodes, I am now invested into it. And now I'm like, okay, I got another 150 more to go. This is awesome. And I think that's also another thing about Fairy Tale. And obviously, it is extremely popular and still is, and people love it.
yeah, yeah. And it's it it's like some other other TV shows or of late with the last year and a half where people watched so much uh, Netflix and Hulu and things like that, and they would watch a regular TV series or international TV series that was 2 or 3 or 4 seasons, and then they would be, oh, there's nothing left. I really want these characters to continue, because either A, they decided not to ever make any more episodes, but thankfully shows like Fairy Tale and things like that, they had so many seasons they could just keep going and developing these characters and giving them uh, a new life and new experiences and things like that. Of course, that goes back to writing and that sort of thing. So
Yeah, no, and I agree, and I just love Fairy Tale. I love the entire world of it, and that world is almost as good as the world of Toriko, because I think Toriko's world is the greatest world, and it's the world that I would love to live in, and because the great thing about Toriko's world is that basically we have these characters that everything is edible pretty much for the most part in the world. It's just some things might kill you if you eat them or don't cook them properly. But still, most things are pretty edible. And you play a character who is a badass, but also is a very comedic character. He also happens to be like the third most senior ranking member in the International Gourmet Organization or Food Organization. And he has a bunch of jokes, and he always has the idea of saying, "Did you call me handsome?" And
yeah,
obviously, this is Mansome. And so, what was this like? I'm just going to throw up what he looks like, and it's great because
yeah.
what was this like for you in this role? Because
Well,
Mansome, it's just a
oh
great role collectively.
gosh, I'm so glad we're talking about that show, because I wanted that show to keep going, because I had so much fun recording Mansome, and that was another Tyler Walker show. Uh, but the assistant engineer or the engineer on that was Kyle Phillips, and we'll talk about him later. Um, but we would have so much fun with Mansome in Toriko or Toriko, however it's I don't know how it's actually pronounced, but um, if we would joke about how I actually looked like Mansome, and so we're like, wait a minute, what were you guys thinking of when you cast this thing? They said no, it was just a coincidence. Um, but I really enjoyed that show because I just thought it was such an unusual concept to be in this world about food and cooking and these massive, massive beasts and vegetables and things that they would cook and eat and they would find and all this. And also, this is going to sound really, really strange. I loved the soundtrack on Toriko. I loved the soundtrack. I just thought it was so cool and different. I mean, it was just that really kind of grungy metal sound, and I was like, man, I would listen to this in the car, man. This is cool. Um, but but yeah, we had a good time recording that, and I think that was it only one season or two seasons?
It's about like
It,
147 episodes.
was
It
it?
was, yeah.
It seemed like it was really short, but maybe I don't know. Maybe it's maybe it's because I it was compacted, so we recorded it so quickly. I don't know, but I just remember going, "Oh man, I want this show to keep going like Fairy Tale." I wanted it to go a lot longer because we had a really good time with him. Yeah.
And there's some really cool stuff that was going on with Toriko. Obviously, Toriko, for those that don't know, was introduced by One Piece essentially,
Hmm.
where the first episode of Toriko, which is not the first episode, was a One Piece Toriko crossover, which is an awesome concept and gave Toriko the boost. On top of that, there was also another One Piece episode. Then there was also, I think, a Dragon Ball Z One Piece and Toriko crossover as well that was out there. And so there was all sorts of stuff surrounding this. Obviously, I think there was merchandise crossing over in Japan. And so obviously there was a lot of push behind Toriko. And even going further into the anime, towards the back end, there were some awesome fight scenes that Manson got to have, where essentially he got to neutralize himself and unleash his full power.
Yeah.
And that was a
Yeah.
crazy fight scene because prior to that, all the way up, and I'm not hopefully ruining too much. Toriko's been around for like at least 8 years at this point. So if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, but it's fair game. But even getting to do those comedic moments, also getting to push information out to the viewer and to people watching, but then also getting those fight scenes, it's kind of a cool combination because
Yeah.
unfortunately, sometimes in anime, you're playing a comedic character, you're playing the straight character, or you're playing the information character. And to get to do a little bit of all three is kind of a nice touch in many ways.
Yeah. 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 It, he was fun and he was broad, he had a really hollow sounding voice. But big and loud uh but I had a really good time with him. I I I, I would have liked for him to have stuck around a lot longer. It was a lot of fun.
Toriko's a fun show. It really is. And people have opinions on it, and I loved it. I thought it was a fun show. I thought it was a bright, colorful show. I
Hmm.
think that, and I just think if you just buy into the world, you're going to have a good time
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah, it was underrated. It was underrated. It was a little kind of a diamond in the rough kind of show, I thought. And I think that if there's One Piece fans watching this, they should definitely check out Toriko. Uh, because it's along that same line, you know. Um, uh, and it's funny because without giving anything away, I actually thought of Toriko Day when I was in the studio because I had my character that I was recording actually had to say the words and now the main event or something like that. Well, at one point, Mansom and Kyle Phillips to this day still laughs about this because Mansom uh, was excited. He's excited about something that's about to happen. It's the main event, and he goes, "All right, the main event." And it was, it was the way that was the way that I recorded it, and it just broke Kyle Phillips. And so every once in a while, if we see each other, and not pre-COVID, it would be the main event. And when I said that line today, it made me think of Manson and Torco, and I think it's so funny that we're actually talking about Manson today. So
And what is that like? Because obviously, I've had a bunch of voice actors on, and every once in a while, somebody leaves somebody a messed up line trying to trip them up in the booth prior, and the sound engineer is on it. Obviously, I don't think that this is one of those things, but it falls under the same line where, because let's be realistic, certain things in anime and voice acting, if you misconstrue it a little bit, it could be really, really funny. in a lot of
Oh,
ways,
yeah,
in which that there's so many moments, and anybody who watches anime knows exactly what I'm talking about. And
yeah,
so this is under those same lines, and certain shows obviously lend themselves better than others. There's like 15 lines I can think off the top of my head that could be slightly modified with Toriko, and,
yeah,
and you know 15 off the top of your head too. So
yeah.
clearly, but what is that like to be in a show that does create that fun atmosphere where you could drop something like the main event and then everybody sort of laughs?
I think those things. I think those kind of moments just kind of happen. You know, um, it's it, it, you when you're recording it, it's you don't you're not really recording and going, okay, this is going to be an iconic moment when I say this, or this is going to be something that somebody's going to put on a T-shirt. You know, um, I think it's just one of those. It's one of those things that just happens, and um, just the way that an actor delivered a line, it just came out, and it just struck you, you know, emotionally, where people responded. And if you eh, I think those kind of things are not necessarily directed. I think they're just felt, and then they just come out. And there's there's been there's been times where you'll record a line, and the director will say, okay, do it again, but do it completely opposite of that, and that's what they'll go with. Or I've had moments where I recorded something, and they were like, okay, that's great, moving on. And I'd go, wait, no, wait a minute. I think I have a better one in me. And something just tells you that you have something that might lend itself to the story in a humorous way or a more dramatic way that they might not have thought of. And so you record it, and they go, yes, that's the take we're going to use. And, uh, you know, it's, I think that's the fun thing about what we do, is that that collaborative thing. Um, when you are comfortable with directors and people that you're working with, and they are comfortable with you, and you both trust each other, of taking risks and trying stuff. You don't have that much time in the studio to do that, but you kind of pick those golden moments where you go, oh, here's something we could try, you know. But
And to even talk about that, because I think the perfect anime that sort of is this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the ancient Magnus Bride, where
oh
you're
yes,
Elias,
yeah,
where obviously this show, for those who've seen it and know what I'm talking about, is very much a heartfelt show. It's a very dramatic show. I think it's safe to say. Obviously, Elias is a 7 foot tall, half demon humanoid type creature who
yeah,
obviously works with tools, and well, he his I guess slave, for lack of a better word, eventually becomes his fiance. She
hmm,
say he buys her, and then they're getting along, and it's their relationship developing, and the world they're living in, and there's all these sensitive moments and these great emotional driving moments. And so, how'd you get this role? Because this is one of those shows that I felt was nobody was expecting it to be what it was. I don't
hmm,
think anybody was like, it's weird. Sometimes you know a show is going to be a hit, and other
yeah,
times you're unsure of how it's going to be received. And obviously, I felt like this was one of those shows that was kind of a sleeper and then became a much bigger thing. And people were like, oh, this is really good. I didn't expect to go down this path and where it goes and all that stuff. So, how did this entire role come about?
yeah.
And this is
Um,
Elias, for those who want to know what he
there
looks
he
like.
is. There's my buddy. Elias Ainsworth in Ancient Magus Bride. That was another one of those things that it was kind of handed to me. And oh, thank you, Jackie. Um, he I love him. I love playing him. Um, Kyle Phillips, who I mentioned earlier, who was the engineer on Torco and several other things that I'd worked on. By this point, he was the director of Ancient Magus Bride, and I don't think it's not. Again, I don't think I auditioned for this. I think it kind of came to him, and he said, I think I want Brian Mathis to play this. I don't know why. I just do. Because when I got into the booth the first time we recorded the first episode, we talked about the voice and we talked about where he was from, and we tried a few things. He said, well, I don't know if he's British. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a beautiful line. Thank you, Jackie. Um, um, he said, let's try a form of a British accent. Let's try just a standard American accent. And he kept, Kyle kept saying, I think I want him to sound warm and gentle and that sort of thing. And so we tried the British thing because they were in England. But then we said, well, it's a fantasy and he is can time travel and do lots of things. Why does he have to have an English accent? So we kind of talked about that. And kind of Elias's voice is just me on on a very relaxed day, just talking to you while we're having coffee. And I'm just being myself and about to fall asleep. So and maybe I'll read you a bedtime story. I don't know. Um, and from what I hear, that the manga is the second or the newest manga is coming out in Japan. So the buzz is we're like, oh, we hope we'll get a new season of Ancient Magus Bride in a few years. I don't know, but um, but we tried. We we set his voice pretty quickly. We tried some things and we we've kind of set that immediately. And I had never met Danny before. As a matter of fact, we had done several episodes before Danny and I were actually in the room together because we had
So,
never met
so
each
let's
other.
talk about that for a second
Mhm.
because people don't understand that voice acting is a very alone profession. And I don't mean that you can't be in relationships, you can't have a spouse. That's not what I mean. What I
That's
mean
right.
is that typically it's you, the director, a sound engineer, maybe an assistant if it's a certain type of show.
Mhm.
Maybe, somebody is walking by on a Funimation tour and is just taking a quick look in or is just passing by for 30 seconds. But for the most part, it's not like you have another actor or actress or an executive from Japan in the room. For the
Right.
most part, it's very much that either sometimes you're privileged enough that you get to hear what the other person said and you get to respond to them, and sometimes you're doing it without that response. And
You're
so
right.
it's a very alone profession, very similar to comic book writing.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. There were uh, uh, there were numerous episodes that I recorded that uh, Danny Chambers had not recorded any of her dialogue yet.
And even to go further, you might have even recorded things out of order to some degree as
Yeah.
well.
Oh yeah. That happens. That happens a lot. Um, and so with that in mind, there were times that Danny was recording without me. She was recording without having my reaction, so it was vice versa. Um, so you really have to trust the director that they know the story that you're recording. Um, to get the right emotional emphasis in the places where it needs to go. Um, uh, because, like you said, there's some really heartfelt moments between Elias and Chise, and um, it would have been nice. I mean, I can only imagine
Would have
how.
been easier, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, how much easier, and I mean, even possibly even deeper uh, in the emotions with Chise and Elias. Um, but yeah,
So
it's
for
yeah.
me, I'll tell my story because my story is probably it's good and bad, and then you're gonna love it and hate it already because whoever I tell the story to, they immediately know. So obviously, Elias has a Pop Funko, which is
Hmm.
awesome, and I
Yeah.
believe your first main character is Pop Funko.
Yes.
That's out there. And what's cool about this one is that it actually came in a Crunchyroll like loot box subscription with a bunch of other cool items in it. And
Yeah.
so I didn't know anything about this show until I got the Pop Funko. And so I came in on the other way where I got introduced to it through a Pop Funko rather than having it done that way. And so I didn't get the chase though because chases were extremely limited in that entire Crunchyroll box. But it's a really cool Pop Funko. It's an awesome thing. I didn't understand anything about it. I was like looking at the pop, and then 3 months later, I watched it all. I'm like, oh man, I'm so happy I have this Pop Funko because it's an awesome show. So if you
You're
ever see
lucky
somebody bring
because they're
you
rare.
what?
You're lucky because they're rare.
I mean,
You
I
know.
don't have a chase. I want a chase. It'd be cool to have the chase. I just have the regular Hot Topic, but they
Yeah.
are super cool. And
Yeah.
I am stoked for it. So if you ever see somebody bringing you one and ask them to sign it, you know it's mine, most likely. Just saying. But that's how I got introduced to it. And so my interpretation and my way that I view this show is very different than other people. And it's a very emotional, it's a very dramatic show, and it's really cool though to have this entire show
Hmm.
and really like deliver because you and Danny are really the main stars, and I feel like everybody else is a support character, and that this show is built around Elias and Chise in many
Right.
ways versus other people. So what was that like too? Because it's really two people are the leads in this show.
Yeah. It's so dialogue heavy for the both of them. But we had, as far for Elias, one of the luxuries we had is that the director did not have to match any flaps with Elias because he had no mouth movements because everything was that skull. So
Very
I
helpful.
yeah, it was very helpful, and people that are watching are like, why is that helpful? Well, because
Yeah,
I could
explain a little bit about that
I
because
could take
people don't know.
yeah, I could, because in anime, in when we're doing an English dub, they try really hard to match what the character is saying to what the Japanese flaps have already what they've previously done, right? So that it looks as authentic as possible. So it's very not Speed Racer. So
It's
um,
not Godzilla.
right, exactly. Um, so with Elias had no mouth movements or flaps as we call them. So I had a little more freedom acting wise to try different things and put more weight on different words, hang on some things a little longer, stretch things just a little bit more here and there where they had a little more emotional emphasis because I was not in the constraints of this has to fit in this movement here. And that's really hard to do. And you really have to trust your director and your engineer that's doing that. But with Elias, it was so much easier because we we had the luxury of time and space to put words and phrases in. So that was a plus thing, and I think is one of the things that makes him come off even more believable and more real is because he's not an out there character. It's kind of like what we were talking about in Macau. He's a little more grounded. He's a lot more grounded. He's a little more real.
And
Um,
what also makes him really cool is that he looks not grounded, but he acts grounded, and it creates a really cool visual effect. And I know that not necessarily you had control over the anime and that entire development per se, but
yeah,
even matching that voice and giving that grounded voice and staying closer and truer to the manga, because anime has to take liberties to some degree, but
right.
even keeping in that theme and keeping his voice grounded, and it's almost like his demonic side, so that humanoid demon thing isn't really what the show is about. It plays a role in it because it sort of sets up an interesting dynamic, but the fact that his voice is grounded and you brought that out really delivers and gives what the show is meant to be. And
Hmm.
it is a skill to understand how to do that, because if you played his voice really pitched up high, it would
Yeah.
totally defeat the entire purpose of the show.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm finally getting to where I can see the comments here. Okay. Yes. So Jackie, yes, there were some episodes where he had a human face. Totally. Totally. Yes. And they did have to match that. But
You're a
90
professional. You could handle it.
95% of the time they didn't have to do that. So it was really, really good. Really easy for me as an actor. And and, and
And even going further off this, because obviously conventions are interesting. I like going to anime cons. I used to go to a bunch, obviously pre-COVID, and then now I'm going to a lot of comic cons, which are a mixture of all of it, just
yeah,
because it's a mixture of every single one of my interests. But obviously, I would imagine that you got invited to cons and we're on panels to talk about Ancient Magnus Bride and Elias, and you got to sign a bunch of cool stuff and meet a bunch of fans. And obviously, I'm sure you went to other anime cons, but this was, I would imagine, sort of your first lead role where people were saying, I want to see Elias and I want to see Brian, I want to see the voice actor behind it. And what was that like? And I know it
uh
sounds sort of corny the way I'm saying it.
no, no. Well, I had just started doing the con thing like right before uh our the COVID thing hit. So but that's coming back. And so uh I do have a con coming up in November in Round Rock, Texas. Um,
Oh, so you're
but
not doing the San Diego
no,
Thanksgiving weekend.
no, I haven't been invited to that one yet. That would be the ultimate goal to do San Diego or New York.
On Thanksgiving weekend.
Uh, I would be happy to. I will have turkey in San Diego. I would be happy to. But yeah, um, he it's it's fun because he's gotten such a cool reaction. I mean, he's almost like a soap opera character, you know, like women really dig him, and all this kind of thing. Well, of course, he's a romantic guy and all this kind of thing. But I really enjoy doing his voice. I really enjoy doing his voice, and he has a lot of fans. So, and I think guys like him because he's badass. I mean, he's got all the magic and all this kind of thing, and he's got cool clothes. So, I mean, who doesn't want to have a really cool walking stick and then have a big cape? You know, um, typical Saturday night, right?
And
Um,
obviously, we want a season two. Hopefully, we'll get it. Hopefully, we could get something nice out of this entire year and the
yeah,
disaster that's hit
season
all of
three,
us.
season three. If there
Season
was,
three, or the
yeah,
second half of the
yeah,
entire manga, which is where it's going and all that stuff. And obviously, I think, and I'm not in any shape or form have power over this, but the series is massively popular. And typically with massively popular shows, they do get, sequel animes and movies and all sorts of cool stuff. So hopefully, the anime gods are on our side on this one.
Yeah, I hope so. Because like I said, the COVID just it just put the brakes on everything, and unfortunately, it stopped some shows, I think, from ever coming back, or at least put them in a very
So let's talk about that for a second because I was going to ask this a little bit later, but I think it's relevant. So obviously, COVID has affected the entire industry. Obviously, comics. For those who are unaware of the comic book form, DC and Marvel stopped producing comics for 4 or 5 months. That was never heard of before, and then DC moved from publisher to publisher and settled on a third publisher just recently. And then it put comics behind and events that were supposed to happen. Obviously, TV, movies completely stopped. Conventions, and I think everybody who's in the con scene is well aware that cons stopped for over a year, and now they're starting to come back. And obviously, San Diego is not happening in July, and so certain cons are coming back, certain things aren't coming back, and it's going to be very interesting where all that goes. And obviously, voice acting and recording has been very, very tricky, where people have been recording from home, and people have studios, and certain shows have continued, but other things have stopped, other things have been delayed. There might even just be a whole issue, and I don't know how it is in the Japan side of things, but anime, a show could, I'll give a great example, and I hate to throw One Piece under the bus a little bit, but for instance, it could just be that Japan, because of COVID, has taken a 6-month hiatus, and they're not animating any new episodes, and you can't record if there's nothing to record, if that makes any sense.
Right.
And I'm not saying that happened by any stretch of the imagination, but I think the idea is that how has that all been affected? Because I know very little about this on the anime side and the recording side.
Tremendously, man. Uh, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn as far as Funimation goes, because they worked really, really hard to make it work, and they did make it work. And we were recording from home, and we had special recording kits, where we were recording live from home with the director is in their home or wherever they are, and the engineer is in another place, and we've got recording software in front of us, and we're doing all of this kind of stuff. I'm just not sure how much I could talk about, but
basically you were. I'll just throw it out there so everybody gets the analogy. Essentially, you were recording through the internet, essentially using some type of Zoom technology and making it work, and everybody had to figure out how to do it. And then also, I would imagine that all of a sudden you're now not in a studio, and it's a whole adjustment, it's a whole mentality change. I mean, correct me if I'm trying to be as vague as possible.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. It was, I told, when we first started doing that, I guess this was,
because I don't think we're speaking out of turn yet. So
yeah, it was early. I'm going to say it was early summer of 20 that we started recording from home. So that was pretty quick, since things had started.
Because it hit in March.
And it hit in March. And I think it was like early summer, maybe midsummer, that we started recording. And it was quite a learning curve. But I was telling a friend of mine, because we had a lot, the actors had to do a whole lot that they don't normally have to do. And they said, well, how hard is it? And I said, it's kind of kind of like spinning 2 or 3 plates in the air while you're trying to cook dinner at the same time, and I don't know, cleaning the kitchen all at the same time. You're doing everything at the same time. Um, it was it was crazy, but I was actually in the studio today, so that was cool.
So,
Um,
what is that like to return to the studio now as well? Because obviously, you probably haven't been in the studio for a while, recording at home, and then now you're back. I don't know if this was the first time or maybe like the third or fourth time, but obviously that must be a newer thing,
yeah,
getting back to normalcy to some
it's
degree.
um, it was. This is I don't know how many times I've been in the studio now, since COVID. Maybe it's 5 or 6 times, but they have very strict protocols, very very strict protocols, um, and they're just doing everything right. They're doing everything right. Everything is safe, and to be honest, it's not a whole lot different than it was pre-COVID. You're still in the studio in front of the mic by yourself. The engineer and the director are just in different parts of either the building or at home. So it's still getting done extremely professionally well. Um, and there's just not as many people around. It's Yeah, but they're still getting the desired result, which is the goal. Um, but anyway, um, I saw another comment from uh, uh,
Yeah. Who
there's
else is throwing this
from
stuff
Clayton. Yes, no lip flaps is the holy grail of anime dubbing. Yes, yeah,
out?
absolutely is the holy grail of anime dubbing. Uh,
I like how this is the most comments I've ever gotten on anything I've done.
oh,
So I would
good.
like to thank everybody who's commenting. I truly appreciate it.
Jackie says, was it hard doing his voice when he was losing his form in Elias? No, it really wasn't hard doing his voice. Uh, it was just he was just getting pitched. The voice is just getting pitched in a different place. It was actually just the louder version of Elias or the louder version of me. So, because when you're hearing a character that's talking like this all the time and sounds like he's, drinking warm cocoa all the time. It's not a whole lot different than getting really loud and, uh, shifting gears like that. So, um, but no, it wasn't hard on the voice. I'm sorry, but go ahead, Andrew. Next, your next question.
Oh, no. This is all about you. I'm on totally good. I'm just average. I'm doing my job. You're the star. I acknowledge my place in society, clearly. Obviously we could talk all about Magnus Bride and Elias and everything that's going on. I'm going to take a leap of faith and assume you have a chase of your Pop Funko.
Oh, do I have a pop Funko of Elias?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And believe it or not, I did not get to buy him in the store. I had to buy him on eBay because
So terrible. It's
I
so terrible.
know. Look, if Pop Funko, any of those people, Hot Topic, any of those people later, if you're watching, send me, I don't know, a case of those guys. I would really appreciate it. Um, I I had never actually seen them in the Hot Topic stores, um, but
They
I
were
think I bought.
hidden in a box and they were very secretive and nobody knew it was really in there. And it
Yeah,
was weird where it was like it's a Crunchyroll like Hot Topic exclusive deal and super cool, super interesting concept. Wish they would do some more stuff, but I didn't know what they were dealing with, and it was kind of super secret for a while. But yeah, no,
yeah,
it was a cool one to throw out there.
yeah. Um, I was actually looking on eBay the other day trying to find some because I got a really good price on the one that I got, and this is well over 2 years ago when I bought mine. But Now
I'll be the judge of that. I'll be the
they're
judge of that because
they're
we all want to
they're
know what you paid
becoming
for
more and more rare, man.
We
I
all
mean,
want to know what you
and
paid for it.
what's that?
We all want to know what you paid for it.
Oh, I got a really good deal.
Because
But
I'll put it this way: the Crunchyroll box was either 25 or $30 for the collective thing.
yeah,
So to pick it up, because I deal with Pop Funkos, I deal with comic books, and I sell them on eBay, and I sell a lot of cool stuff. So I haven't sold that one yet. I
yeah,
promise. I still have it somewhere. But
yeah.
anyhow, was it the regular version or was it the chase?
I guess I have the one that I have is the one that says Hot Topic exclusive. So I guess it wasn't the Chase. I guess it was the other one.
So for
Um,
those who are wondering, the chase is a much rarer one. It's almost like a 1 in 6 out of the already Hot Topic exclusive that was somewhat limited. So it's the chase is even rarer. And that was the
okay.
entire center. And so that chase can go for like 60, 70, $100. And if you see a chase on the Elias, chances are it's worth money. And then also, if somebody brings you a chase, say, hey, sign it. You should probably add like $15 to signing it because it's going one place only. So I promise you, I'm full of good fights today.
Yeah.
But on that note, we're gonna stop talking about Elias before I get me in trouble and you in trouble.
My son is watching, so I would be like, okay, get on there, man, and try to find some of these Chase Elias Ainsworth Pop Funkos. So,
It's all right, Jackie B. You can comment as much as you want. I am
yes, absolutely,
absolutely
Jackie.
perfectly
Thank you.
fine with you commenting all you want.
I love Matt Rockstar. His all this talk about Funko Pops makes me want to go even more into crippling debt because of the. You're my hero, Matt. Thank you. So
This is
yes,
so bad, so bad. So I definitely want to talk about three more roles, and
okay.
obviously we're going to talk. And I'm going to get the name wrong, and I know everybody's going to hate me for moving on from Elias here, but I want to talk about Vidax from Re-Ride D Daria, uh,
Oh, okay, okay.
and and so this guy.
before we go any further, his actual pronunciation of his name is Vito. Vito. But I love the Vidox. I love that.
I
It's
like that. So it's Vito, and he's a cop.
yes,
And this show is a weird show. It is a
yes.
weird show. It is bizarre for lack time playing, time traveling,
Hmm.
interesting version of time. Obviously, Vito sort of helps the main character,
Right.
and pretty much it's like 11 episodes, and they're trying to stop a war, and then there's a really cool car that he drives, and all sorts of fun stuff. So, what
I,
was this like?
I loved that show.
I
I
enjoyed
loved
it. Don't get me
I
wrong.
loved Reride. Um, I loved Reride. Um, and I just and what there's so many cool things about Reride. Okay. I love the concept and I love playing Vito. I also got reunited with Danny Chambers, who played my daughter in Reride. A lot of people don't realize that. She played the love interest in Ancient Magus Bride, and then she plays my daughter in Reride. That the little girl that's riding around in the car that he adopts because I think he kills her family or something. Isn't that why?
He might have killed the person who killed her mother and father.
Yes, right, right. That's
I
right.
think Vito killed somebody
Oh,
yet,
I
and
didn't.
then
Yeah, okay, right, right. Thank you. There's
but Vito's the good guy.
he's a good guy. He's a good guy, but I play a lot of badasses, but also I got to play opposite of my good friend Adam Gibbs, who played the lead role, and he and I were another one of those situations. He and I were
And
never
me and
in the
Adam Gibbs are
studio
working on
together.
something, trying to figure out how to get him on.
Yes. Oh, he's so great. He's so great. We had such a good time. Um, um,
But
but I
what is that like to if you know somebody's voice? and obviously you know Adam Gibbs' voice, and then you're playing his opposite, but you're still on the same team, but you have a different approach per se on how to stop something, and there's a little bit of a clash. You're not going to war between each other in many ways. But you have a difference of opinion, but you know his voice. What is that like for you as an actor? Because it's a real advantage when you're voicing a character and you know what somebody can deliver, and you could sort of anticipate a little bit where they're going to go with it.
Well, if I think if we were recording in real time together, like like going back to what I said about when I wish that Danny Chambers and I had recorded together. I think we would have gotten much more out of each other, you know. And the same thing with Adam, because Adam and I are friends. Adam and I have done uh, plays together, so we know how each other works, and um, we understand each other's temperament and that sort of thing. So when we're in the studio and you're recording hours apart or days apart or weeks apart, you know,
Something's lost.
yeah, there's just a tiny little bit. It's not something that the audience is not going to recognize because you've got a great director. And in Rewrite, I mean, come on, we have Caitlin Glass. She's amazing. She's an amazing voice actor. She's an amazing director. Um, and you know, but it gave me just a sense of confidence and peace when I was recording, knowing that Adam was on the other side, you know, because I knew that he was always going to give a really good performance. So that and you can't really, the only advantage you would get was I knew that he was gonna get something good recorded because Caitlin is so good. But other than that, it's almost a handicap, um, because you can only react to what you're given on the recording. So, but I trust him enough as an actor that he gave his absolute best. So there you go.
And then Rewrite is just it's one of those shows that you got to watch it all, and you
Yeah,
really got to jump in, and you got to just buy into it a little bit, but also realize where it's going and what's going on, and it's out there for lack
yeah.
of a better word. There are very few shows that are like it.
I
A
mean,
rate,
what's not to like? It's time travel, right? I mean,
I
I
think
love time travel's great.
it's the show that I compare it to is a show called Erased, and Erased is very similar to
Okay.
Rewrite, but obviously Erased is dealing with children capturing the disappearance of one of their classmates versus this is dealing with a bunch of adults trying to stop a war,
Yeah.
and it's a great show to watch. It's pretty readily accessible as well in a variety of places.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's one of those shows that you should watch. And it's not that long; it's like 11 episodes, from my
Hmm.
understanding.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty short watch, but you get everything you need out of it.
Hmm.
And then I like to talk about religion too, because you're the priest in Black Clover.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I've been waiting to drop that line for legitimately like
Please.
3 months, saying I want to talk about religion. I've been waiting forever. This is the perfect time. So obviously, this is a very small role, but it's a very important role. And how do you feel about Asta?
Oh, it's so funny that everybody seems to like Priest in, Black Clover, and he's just not in it very much, But I guess because he's kind of manic, because he has like the first line in the show. He's like, "Oh, these babies, look at they're so cute," and and he's always trying to fix things, and then I love playing him because he he bursts into tears at the drop of a hat. He's always crying.
He was very upset when Asta left. He didn't
Yes.
care about He didn't care
Yeah.
about him. He
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
perfectly fine to give off to the wolves.
Yes.
It was when Asta gets his Gilmore, I think it's called. You could tell the priest was very upset.
He gets to be a little Priest is a little manic. I don't know. I guess that's the human side of Priest, is like he's not always stoic and priest like. He has his manic moments. I guess that's
He should
what
get it.
pop potatoes will do to you. I don't know.
He should get his own spin-off. We should
Yes.
go right to the producer of
Let's
Black
pray
Clover.
about that. That Priest will get his own show.
And before you and me both get in trouble, we're joking.
Yeah.
But if they want to go do it, I'm totally down for it.
Right.
I could read a 3-part manga all about that. I'm just
Oh my
saying.
gosh. That's funny. Yeah. And I have to shout out to Chris George, who directed Black Clover, because he and I always have a great time in studio, and he's a great voice actor, and he's also a great director, and so he would always pull really good stuff out of me. So
And then obviously we're gonna get to the final role here, and I think you know what role I want to talk about, and it's a very important role. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong one. That's a great show too.
yeah.
But this is the role we're going to talk about,
Ah.
and
Okay.
very very stoic character, and some monkey D. Garp. And
Yeah.
obviously, before we were speaking off air, I said that One Piece is the gift that keeps on giving to every single voice actor in Funimation. I think every single voice actor in Funimation has been in One Piece in one capacity or another.
It's,
Um,
yeah, it's kind of the Law and Order SVU of anime, isn't it? It's like
very much, very
every
much.
New York actor has been on Law and Order SVU.
And let's say that somebody left Funimation for 10 years. Well, now that Stabler is back into the franchise, so everybody can always come back. There are
Yeah.
people who have not been on One Piece for 10 years who come back every once in a while, and it's amazing. But I digress right there. So how did this come about? Because this is kind of a big role. That's a big supporting role. Garp is obviously very important to the story in a lot of ways, both from the past, in the future. Obviously, we're going to talk about the entire Whitebeard War, because that's probably the most prevalent of Garp and his biggest thing so far. I think in One Piece is a safe assumption.
Yeah. It, it, I don't even remember. Did Tyler Walker direct One Piece?
That's a Black Clover quote right there.
Yeah, my wife and I are watching Black Clover right now. Oh, I love Priest. Yeah, thanks, man.
But
Thanks, Matt.
yeah, to
Uh,
talk about One Piece, because
I don't know.
obviously
I don't
Garp
know.
comes in and
Uh,
either third or fourth season, I think, of
yeah.
One.
Um, well, here's the thing that I always say about Garp is well, first of all, I had no idea that Garp was going to reoccur so many times and have the weight that he was going to have. So when I went into the studio the first time, and I was told that I was going to be playing this character, you're going to play this character, Admiral Monkey D. Garp, and
Yeah, what'd you think?
yeah, I was like, I don't know. I was trying to think, I'm trying to think what does he sound like, and they go, well, the very first scene that you see him in, he's been asleep and he's eating these donuts, and so I you have to be very careful when you're making these choices, because I made this choice, and all of a sudden I was doing the Garp voice, and I didn't realize I was doing the Garp voice, and so I had to bring back that Garp voice every time I came to the studio. That growly thing that he does when he's talking, and every time you hear him say Luffy, you know, um, you know, I had no idea that I was going to have to do that every single time. And so and he's actually very taxing on the voice. And so my advice is always be careful how you make those choices in making the voices. Is this something you're going to be able to uh, uh, duplicate over and over and over again? Um,
And even going beyond the voice, because obviously there's a lot of stuff going on with Garp. Obviously, Garp is pretty high in the Navy. His
yeah,
son isn't a great son for his Navy career. His
right,
grandson isn't helpful either. Obviously, he probably wasn't. He might not have been the greatest parent to his son Dragon, Monkey D. Dragon, and
right,
definitely not to his grandkid either. And then obviously, I guess his adopted grandkid Ace. And obviously, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And that entire arc at Impel Down in the Whitebeard War, you got Luffy trying to save Ace. You have that showdown between Luffy and Garp punching. And then you also have Garp, who raised Ace to some degree, watching Ace get killed, seeing
right.
Luffy get hurt, and Ace saving Luffy. And you get that entire situation going on. And it's a crazy circumstance, and it's so emotional. And like, I think it's even more so than Elias. And One Piece isn't an emotional show per se, but this is probably one of the most emotional moments I think in modern anime time. Is those like 3 or 4 episodes of that going on
Yeah,
where Ace gets killed, and then it's this entire messed up circumstance to some degree, especially because they're on opposite sides, and then somebody that he raised to a degree and also has
right.
ties to some serious pirate history just got killed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what did you know about the show? What did you understand? How were you being directed? Because it's a crazy circumstance. And I don't know how much you can
Yeah.
reveal per se, but it's a wild scene, and anybody who's watched One Piece knows exactly what I'm referring to.
Well, uh, to be honest, it's it's really difficult when you go into the studio when you're doing a show like One Piece that has hundreds of episodes, um, and you only have so much time to record the scene or the episodes that you're recording that day. You really have to rely on the director, and the director re- they really have to know the show backwards and forwards, because they have to give you all that exposition when you go into the studio. Here is what's happened up to now.
You're in the middle of a
Because
war.
yeah,
Like,
right, all of these things have happened, and so you have to throw that into your emotional melting pot in a matter of minutes and make choices and read that dialogue and make all of that history come together in that moment. Um, because a lot of us don't read the manga, and we don't get a lot of prep time on the backstory of this, so we have to really rely on the director. Um, and uh, but
and even going further off of this, because obviously this is a massive, significant moment. This is kind of the end of the first half of One Piece.
mhm,
And I don't know if you've gotten to watch it or got a glimpse of what the reaction was, but this
mhm.
entire arc as a whole in Garp is, I think it's the most prevalent arc that Garp has been in so far. And so, what was that like for you? Because obviously, you must have gotten some feedback, not necessarily by Funimation or how in the booth, but how it was received by fans. Because it must be sort of interesting for you to be like, oh man, this is massively significant, and this has massive effects for the entire rest of One Piece. And it's not all Garp, but obviously Garp is an intricate part, and also that moment when Luffy punches Garp and sort of saves Ace, it's a very, very defining moment for the character of Luffy. And it's a very important moment, and it's a very important moment to get that voice correct and how Garp is responding. And he sort of smiles in the anime a little bit. And obviously, you got to get that voice because when people smile, their voice changes a little bit.
Right.
And so, very, very important moment, and one of the most important moments. I would make the argument in One Piece because Luffy's now becoming a full-fledged pirate. Before, not saying he was pretending, but this is the moment where he's openly defying the government and entering this stage of now being on the road of finding One Piece and becoming king of the pirates. It's that actual probability moment now becoming a reality on that punch that he hits Garp with. And it's an intricate moment. It's a pretty important moment. I'm a One Piece fan, in case you didn't know.
Obviously. I think that.
Or did that not even occur and cross your mind because you're just not kept informed? Or
no, it doesn't. It doesn't really, because we're just not informed like that, and that's kind of the cool. That's one of the cool things about talking to fans about this kind of stuff, is because you have the luxury of watching it over and over again if you want, and studying it a little more. Like I said, we sometimes only get minutes to digest all of that information, get it into our hearts and minds, and then put it through the microphone. But at the same time, the animation and the artwork, the Japanese animation and artwork is very telling. It tells us, it really tells us what we need to be feeling, because they do such a good job of articulating through the facial gestures and that sort of thing, and you can hear a lot in the emotional context in the Japanese. Even though I don't speak Japanese, I don't understand Japanese, you can hear emotional context in the Japanese combined with the artwork, and the translators work really hard translating that into English. And it's just a blend of a lot of things all firing together. We've got great directors that really understand the text and the story, and they're telling you this is what's happening, this is what you need to be thinking about, and this is what has happened up into this moment. This is what has happened with Luffy, and this is what happened with Ace, and this is all happened here. This is what's happened with Garp. This is coming along, and boom, here we are in this moment. And it's
it works.
You're making a very big anime cake, out of all kinds of ingredients.
And then obviously this moment is significant. And then the other cool thing about Garp, and we sort of touched on it a little bit, but I'm going to go a little bit further, is that he is not in the show then for 50, 60, 100 episodes, and then he appears out of nowhere in a very jolly mood with another character joking around, and or he's taking two rookie soldiers and sort of putting them through the ringer, and you get all this jovial enjoyment stuff at the same time with Garp. We get a little cameo, we get a little just him at Marine headquarters or Navy headquarters. And so we get a bunch of cool stuff. And also he's been in a bunch of the movies, and that's always cool and stuff like that. So obviously he's the gift that keeps on giving in this entire thing. And then we also get his past, and we get flashbacks, and we get a young Garp, which is cool too. And
that was challenging.
And so what was that like? Because obviously you're now not going forward, and obviously you want to keep elements of his grizzly voice, but you got to almost lighten up the grizzle a little bit. And I mean, it sounds weird when I'm saying it. I know it could be completely misinterpreted what I just said. It could be interpreted to be a whole different innuendo. That's what I was saying. It came right out of my mouth. But even lighten that up and make him, obviously sound like Garp, but younger.
Yeah. It was interesting because I had to you know, I said, well, I was like, well, what if you take Garp, the age that he is, and then you take off several years of cigars and whiskey, and how much smoother would his voice be after all that?
Red
And you
Velvet.
take off 20 or 30 years of screaming, you know. And so we had to play with him a little bit, how to soften him up. And so when you watched younger Garp, you could see that in 30 years he was going to have that, you know.
You could see what kids did to him.
That's right. This is what Luby did to me, you know. But yeah,
And obviously, it must be a blast though with One Piece. And I'm not going to push you too much on Garp because I want people to actually respect Garp and not have to be yelled by at Garp. And I want good Navy soldiers to come out of all that Garp's lecturing here. But obviously, Garp is a character that every One Piece fan knows, and it's
right.
super cool. And there's a lot of One Piece characters, but I think everybody knows Garp. And obviously, it must be a blast for you to kind of be in this role where you're legitimately known by every One Piece fan. Obviously, it's becoming even more relevant. The Ace books just came out, and obviously, there's references to Garp and that stuff and other things. And there's just so much One Piece history, and Garp is such an intricate part. And so it must just be an awesome role to have. And there's so much more of Garp to come.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun.
And we never know when Garp is going to come up, much like Doflamingo. And
Yeah.
I love Rob McCollum, who plays Doflamingo. And Rob was on my other show, and he basically said Doflamingo is the gift that keeps on giving, and so is Garp.
So is Garp, yeah, right.
And so on that note, I don't want to press any more with the anime roles, and I definitely want to talk about the COVID, because obviously, and briefly, and not pushing too hard on certain things, and we touched a little bit on Funimation, but obviously COVID has messed up a lot of stuff in entertainment as a whole. Yeah. I think voice acting, which we already mentioned, and you're going to a con in November. I don't know if you had a bunch of cons already lined up that were going to happen in 2020. That didn't happen, but obviously, I don't know if you did or didn't, but obviously, where do you see all this going? Because changes need to occur at cons. People need to be safe. Whether, and this isn't anti-vaccination, I just think that things are going to have to change a little bit in the con.
I think, without getting into a really deep conversation or getting political or anything, I think things are going to have to change.
I'll give you my position on it, where I think masks for the next 2 years at cons are not a bad idea. And I'll explain why. So everybody knows, and this isn't political, so con cred is a real thing. That means that if somebody has the flu at a con and you have 40,000 people there, you could bet your ass that 10,000 people come Monday are not going to feel so hot. No, and this isn't because people are mean. It's just that when you're all tight together, things spread. And everybody's touching something. So, and obviously, I think COVID is flu level or more contagious. And whether everybody's vaccinated or not, it's just a matter of when's the next thing. And so I think that masks for the next year at cons would be great. And I personally think that when I go to a con, I might wear a mask indefinitely, because guess what? If it protects me 25% more, and I don't get the flu on Monday morning, hey, I don't like the flu. So that's how I view it. I also think less attendance, but I also think that people can't just stay in their houses forever. I think, as a society, we have to move forward in a safe way. And I think that there's a variety of methods that can be done.
Yeah. I think that everybody's really going to have to work together and put on their patience pants and really.
It's going to be trial and error.
Yeah. As well. I mean, to be honest, I'm already vaxxed. I've already gotten my vaccinations, so I feel good about that. Um,
I'm significantly younger, and it's becoming a
y-
nightmare to get it. And I'm on the phone
yeah,
every morning for like 2 hours, and it's beyond frustrating.
yeah.
So
I know it's eventually gonna get easier for everybody, but um, I just think that it's whatever it was is not what it's going to look like now.
it's going to take a
It's going to look
while.
different. I think it's safe to say it's going to look different. It's going to look different.
It's
Hopefully
going
it'll
to be what
be
I want. And I'm not going
yeah.
to lie. I
Mhm.
want it. I've been wanting cons to look how COVID is going to affect them because I think it's actually going to be better. It's going to be
Yeah.
better for what I want to do at a con, which is get autographs, get my graded stuff, buy stuff, and then do a panel and go home. I personally do not care about cosplay photos. I personally do not care about celebrity photos. I want to go and get my Pop Funkos signed. I'm not. I'm there more for business on my end, and I'm also there to get cool art and cool stuff. So I think it's going to look more like a shopping mall and less like an experience. And I still think there's going to be experience stuff, but I think it's going to look more like that for a while at the very least, which isn't a bad thing, per se. Just some people are going to be disappointed in how it's
Yeah.
going to look, but it's neither here nor there. Maybe I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, so be it. I'm totally cool with being wrong on this point, but I think it's going to look more like a shopping mall, which benefits me because I'm an indie comic guy and I'm a
Yeah.
comic guy, and I'm coming at it from a business perspective. Where if it's more streamlined and I can get everything
Yeah.
I want, cheaper, faster, more effective, I love it. So that's
Yeah.
how I view it.
I'm trying to plug in.
But
Yeah.
I digress right there. But
I I think we're just it's just going to look different, and we just have to
be patient.
be patient.
Be patient, and also don't everybody get all bent out of shape. It's you're going to be taken care of one way or another at a con.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on that note, and obviously I know there's things that you can talk about, things that you can't talk about. I'm not going to push anything that you can't talk about, but I know they got a bunch of stuff coming out that you may not be able to talk about. But what can you promote? First off, that is coming out. Obviously, Garp is going to be in One Piece at some
Yeah.
point. I think that's a safe assumption. As
got
well as where can people find you on
the
social media,
yeah, you can,
website,
yeah.
Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff, and obviously
Uh,
all the stuff that you
yeah,
can't talk about.
Twitter.
Will
Yeah,
then
you can find me on you can find me on Twitter. Singac Drum is my handle. You can find me on Instagram, Brian Mathis 17. I have a Facebook like page. It's not my personal Facebook page, so don't friend me on my personal Facebook page. I will not accept it. I have a lot of fans that do that. I appreciate that, but that I won't. I don't do that. You can, but I do have a like page. You can find that one too. It's like my voice actor page. Um, let's see. I've got some episodes of Fire Force that are out.
Gustav.
Yes. Um, there's what else?
One Piece,
One
Anxious
Piece.
Magnus Bride is out there.
What else is new? Millionaire Detective.
Overlord.
Yes, I think so. Millionaire Detective. Um, um, there's a new. Let's see. There's a couple of Sentai titles out there. Um,
Obviously, your cameo. You could promote
yeah,
that.
I'm on Cameo. I'm on Cameo. Yes, thank you, Jackie. I've actually
Yeah,
been trying
everybody's
to.
got you. Everybody's got you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you. Um,
Black Clover. Yeah,
Black
got just
Clover.
your stuff.
There's a what's the one on Sentai? Oh God, it was about uh, it was about all the rubies and sapphires and diamonds. Um,
I know this one. Oh, I know this one. This one.
uh,
I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna pull it up.
what's it called?
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Land of Luscious or
Land of the Lustrous. Yes. Okay.
Lustrous?
Land of the Lustrous.
You play Master Congo,
Yes.
and he's a
Um,
diamond, and he's a
yeah.
monk. It's
Yeah.
a good one. It's a
Yeah.
fun one. I
It's a
always
good
see like
show.
the first.
I have another Sentai product that's coming out. I can't even tell you what the name of it is yet because we're not allowed to. But you will be very excited when it does. I will tell you that much. Let's see. I'm trying to think of the other Funimation titles.
What con are you going to be at in November in Texas?
I think it is called Colossal Con in Round Rock, Texas, which is near Austin.
So the reason why I bring this up is that obviously, things are moving forward. And so if you are in Texas or you're around Texas or you would like to fly to Texas, obviously looking at late August to the back end of 2021, you should start planning your cons now if you so want to choose one. And obviously it is April, but November is legitly around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not even joking when I say that.
You're right. You're
It's
right.
funny, but if you're going to a con, November is legitimately around the corner.
Yeah, you got to plan in advance. Yeah, way in advance. But yeah.
So anything else you got to promote or want to promote or just want to shout out to anybody? Because I'm totally cool with that too. It's the selling hour.
Gosh, what else?
We got your Cameo. We got your Twitter, which you post a bunch of stuff, and obviously anything anime wise on your Facebook page. And when you can announce that show, it'll be up there for the most part, correct?
Yeah.
And so we're not keeping you in the dark, and I don't even know it. So obviously he's keeping all of us in the dark, but legally he has to. But it will, the second that you can announce it, you're going to announce it on your Twitter. So if you're interested in what that is, when it's good to go, it'll be announced on Twitter, Facebook, and probably a variety of other places as well. So it's a good reason to follow people.
Yeah. And if you want, you can always go to Behind the Voice Actors or Anime News Network, any of those websites, and look at my profile. It'll give you every single thing I've ever done.
Except Behind the Voice Actors is missing a bunch of roles of yours.
That is true.
IBM or
IMDb
database, way more effective. Yeah. Way more effective. If you want to know what Brian's been in, definitely Internet Movie Databases is the best place to go.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say it on that note, and then on having said all that, and I've been saying it, you have to support people you like. You have to support them economically. That means at a con, you should buy merch from them. If they have a coffee or a Patreon or selling prints or doing a cameo or doing something else, there's like 15 things that are going on. If they're at a virtual con, you got to support them that way. Super, super helpful to do that. But again, right now, money is tight. I completely get it. I think most people in America get it. That, look, you know what it is? If right now your money's tight, please make sure your rent's paid, your mortgage is paid, you got electricity, water, food, shelter, your kids are good, your spouse is good, your dog is good, and make sure that they're good for the next month and maybe even the month after that, because we are not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. So please take care of yourself first and foremost. But if you're in that position where you can't throw money at somebody or support somebody economically, follow them on social media. It is super, super important. It means a lot. Following somebody on Twitter, engaging them, retweeting, giving them a like, saying, oh, man, just soar. If you just watched, Reride, for instance, and I know a few of you are watching, hopefully going to rewatch Reride or watch it for the first time, just shoot a tweet at Brian and said, oh, you are awesome in this. It makes people feel so good inside, warm and fuzzy. It also lets, a bunch of companies know, hey, people like this anime. People enjoy it. Also retweet things, like Facebook pages, give hearts on Facebook pages. Also, my Twitter's up there. It's Pop Anime Comics. Please check out my Twitter. You can check out my Facebook page as well, which is also live streaming this. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe because I'm doing a bunch of interviews as well. And so obviously you should support people on social media, and it's free. And it does mean something, and it is super helpful. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Oh, man. Well, I just appreciate it's talking to you and talking to the fans and just talking about anime and uh, it's it puts my name back out there a little longer, and we introduce some people to some new shows that are new to them, you know, and so yeah, just keep going.